You're listening to this week's episode of the Vacation Rental Business in Today's World podcast. You're about to start transforming your business and life with the information found here. We interview some of the greatest and most influential minds in the vacation short-term rental industry and supporting businesses. The information found here is a combination of brain science, transformational thinking, safety and loss prevention, and vacation short-term rental knowledge and experiences, all rolled into one to help you and your business to achieve levels you never thought possible. I am glad you are here, and now please welcome your host, Eric Thibodeau.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to Safer VRS. It's Eric Thibodeau, and today I have a presentation I'd like to share with you. A property manager asked me to put this together for his group, and I thought it would be good to share with everyone, so I'm going to record a session for that. It's really good to do this interactively, but I'm going to go ahead and do it. I'm here in one of my vacation rentals here in Gulf Shores, Alabama. I'm at the Del Mar properties, and so excited to be here this week. And I'm going to go ahead and launch this here. I'm going to go ahead and share. And what we're going to talk about is incident management and what to do when an incident occurs. And, I spend a lot of time working with everyone, reviewing what are we doing to, prevent, or let's rephrase that and say, what are we doing to control, right? We want the presence of controls. And so this is not an if question, this is a when question. When this occurs, when an event occurs, we will need to respond. And we may have controls present, we may not have controls present. However, if you think about it, it's really about how are we going to respond. And I thought it was a really good topic to go ahead and do. And I'm going to share it with everybody. So here we go, launching into the presentation here. So, all right. So when we take a look at this incident management, what to do when an incident or event occurs. And so let's begin here with awareness. Everything in our life, whether we're at work, we're at home, awareness is the start to everything. Without it, nothing changes, right? So if we're not aware of how we need to prepare ourselves, the presence of controls, how to do revenue management, how important housekeeping is, right? If we're not aware, we don't really fully recognize it, and we don't really begin to address or learn more, understand. So without it, nothing changes. So once you're aware, you can begin to understand, as we're covering here in the slides. So here we go. We're going to talk about, we know when an incident occurs, we need to be prepared. Okay. We've worked diligently to prevent or to put the presence of controls. And now we have a situation where it may not be happening. So I'm going to go ahead and work to make my screen bigger. There you go. And so I start with these words. Safety isn't expensive, it's priceless. So what we're in the business of doing, whether a vacation rental owner or we're a property management company, we are in the business of providing a safe vacation short-term rental property to our owners and our guests. It's not just the right thing to do just for your guests and owners, right? It saves you money in the long run. It's been proven in my 30 plus years of working as a safety professional, safety manager, safety leader, pretty much full time here, up until recently when I retired, is that it was easy to identify those businesses that were working to address safety in a proactive way with the presence of controls. And the presence of controls, it can be a varied amount of activities, right? And even when something happens, they are prepared. They train, they review, they're prepared. So this is really priceless, right? It's going to save you money in the long run, may even save your business or your property if you're an individual owner. I fully believe that providing a safe vacation short-term rental property is part of hospitality. I can't see how it's not. And I believe that you feel the same way. However, at times, maybe we don't fully understand how to do that. And so that's what Safer VRS does. And then we fully also, maybe we don't fully understand, I fully understand that mistakes happen. And When they happen, we want to have the presence of controls to address it. And even at that point, we need to manage those particular issues. And there's a variant, we'll go through it. So what we're trying to do is avoiding settlements to increase our insurance costs, to time your home is off the market if there's a fire, if there's a loss, if there's a storm, right? And we want a proactive safety commitment, keeps money in your pocket. Really, this is what we're talking about. So the first part is safety is part of hospitality. That's a given. Next, we want to run our business in a safe manner to prevent incidents, that have the presence of controls, to retain the hard-earned money for our owners, provide for our guests, and protect our businesses. So we strive to be proactive in our work to maintain a safe property for all our owners, guests, and for our team, right? Let's not forget our team. So here, once again, this was intended to be interactive. So I want you to write down your responses and actions, and then let's discuss these 3 scenarios. And so you could do that in your team. If you want to have a meeting and invite me over to a learning session that you're having, let's do that. So here's the first scenario, and these are for you to address. The neighbors near one of your properties calls your office about water pouring out of the property doors. It's believed to be a hot water heater or piping failure. What are your response actions? Go ahead and write those down, and we'll revisit them later. Scenario number 2, you receive a call from one of your guests' older children. It's really hard to hear the call. On the call, you can't really hear. Their dad has fallen down the stairs and he's not responding. What are your response actions? Go ahead and write those down. Hey, and it's okay if you say, I don't know what we're going to do. That's okay. Write that down. This is an opportunity for us to learn. Third scenario, your guests call at about 8 p.m. and they're just arriving at the house. It was a family of 4, 2 adults and 2 kids, and the kids were so excited they ran to the house, and the mother tried to slow them down and she tripped on the walkway. They're on the way to the hospital, and they just said it was so dark when we arrived at the house. What are your response actions? Go ahead and write those down. So once again, intended to be interactive, and we could share and learn and even talk about how we can do this. And I'd love to be part of that discussion with you. So when we take a look at this, I'll call it simple maybe, but maybe not for you, right? So in each one of those situations we just covered, there was an event, and it could be your top event. It could be an event, and everything on the left side are the presence of controls that we want to put in place. Okay. And we think about the tripping hazards, right? So there's the trip hazards that are out there. Maybe we can or can't remove them. That's always our first part. So we want to then put in some controls, right? So we could possibly, if there are sharp edges along the sidewalk, we could round those down. We could put lighting, right? The guest in that third response said, hey, it was so dark. We could put lighting, and we could come up with a lot of other different scenarios. But we want to look on this left-hand side. What are we doing? What are the presence of controls? And if I have a situation where I don't have a control in place to either eliminate the threat or to reduce the severity, I need to rethink that. You as a team need to rethink that. We can measure controls in place. We can't measure things where we don't do anything. Hope is not a plan, right? So let's look at that. These are things that are happening before, this prevention, this proactive. So now we're back in the middle. We have our scenario 3. The mother has tripped. She's hurt. They're going to the hospital. We don't know what's happening. So now we had the opportunity before to correct, and maybe we did correct, or maybe we did put in the controls to reduce the severity, but something's happened now at our property as we're the owner, we're the manager. So now we go to the right side and we want to recover. And we have to look and say, what are the consequences that could have occurred because of this? And we think about those, and then we work to recover. So every incident has a recovery phase, right? So we'll cover that here. And this is where we're going, because now we're going to work on this right-hand side. of this particular bow tie view, if you will. It looks like a bow tie. So let's just think here. Things will happen, right? I said when things happen, and they will. It's not if, when. Despite our best efforts, things will happen at the properties we manage, right? I'm recording this here during spring break, and things have happened, certainly, right? And we want to look at the controls we have in place. These events could be fires in the property, they could be injuries, fatalities, natural disasters, whatever they are. We should be looking at what are the presence of the controls we have. And even if I have them, it could be I am failing in this incident to a safer state where I can't prevent it, but I'm going to do my best to limit the severity of the incidents. So now in that recovery phase, when you have these events, whether you've done something or didn't do anything, you have to respond. And how you respond and recover and manage the incident will make a huge difference in your business, a huge difference. And just my brief example on that is, I work for BP, and BP had the Macondo oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico. And one of the things we looked at is, hey, this has happened. We will be evaluated, judged, right? We're always judging anyway. Our business's future is based upon how I respond in that incident. Every one of us in that oil spill, how we respond, how we recover, and how we manage the situation makes a difference. It did there, and it will today, and it will tomorrow in your business when you have an event. How you respond, recover, and manage the situation makes a huge difference. So when an incident occurs, I want you to consider the following things, right? Basically 5 steps that I've outlined. So now we're on this right side of the bow tie. I want you to first think about over responding. And I'll go through each of these, right? But over responding is the first part. An event happens, I'm responding. Next, I cooperate and stabilize the situation. I recover, I support, and I learn, share, and grow. These are the 5 steps that are very important, critical when you're recovering and managing post-incident. In all these phases, you're going to be gathering information, notes, reports, pictures, videos. They will become invaluable, particularly as time moves on, things get changed. It's really important to understand what those are. It's also important to understand that all of that information, it could be discoverable in the event of an insurance claim or lawsuit, etc. So we're going to talk about that as well. If you or your team can arrive in a non-branded vehicle, consider it. Be aware of branded clothing and hats that you're wearing, right? So there could be pictures, there's iPhones and Android videos all the time out there recording everything that's happening at a location, at a house, at a condo, who's arriving, who's leaving, and it's going to be made public. And if your brand is out there, you want to be cautious about that. Can I respond and remove my hat, right? I mean, if I have a truck with my logo on, it's really hard to do that. Maybe I park, a ways and walk in. So there's ways to manage it, but I'd like you to consider that as well. So what is over responding? Over responding is the simple action of sending more resources than is expected is needed. And I cover here water leak, which is our first scenario. Water leaks in a property are almost as bad as a fire from property damage. They linger quite a while. We had one in the very property that I'm sitting in right now last June. And over responding was something that we did, right? We sent 3 people. We just didn't send one. We sent 3 people from our property management team here to begin taking care of the situation. So understanding what is it in your team. If you say, well, I'm going to send that one person out there, send 2, send 3, because the time it takes when you're responding, and just like it is when I was in the fire department, or I was on the ambulance, or I was in oil spill response, it doesn't matter what I'm doing. I send more resources than I need, and not over exorbitant. I don't send the whole fire department, but I may send 2 stations. I may say 2 fire engines, a ladder, and a squad car to a fire. I may send, if it's a motor vehicle accident and there's 2 vehicles involved, I may send 2 ambulances, maybe 3. Because consider this, the information that you're going to receive I would reckon to say 20% of what you receive is actually correct on the first call, right? Because you're getting a quick response from someone who's there or someone who heard somebody say that. And then just the facts, in my experiences, just are not there. So over responding is really critical. Send more teams, send your maintenance team, send 2 team members, send a property manager, send some people to help support this response to this situation, whatever it is. Certainly considering the safety of those individuals when they're getting there. It's always easier to pull back resources or stop them en route rather than sending them later. Think about it like, hey, someone's life it could be at risk, whether it is or not. I'm sending more resources. More than likely in the property management business, it's probably not life threatening, but the same concept is there. So get someone there to start gathering information and providing a size up on the situation to report back to the owner of the business, the operations manager, the general manager, the maintenance manager, whatever it is, so they can say, okay, I've sent some people. Do I need to send different people, more people? Information is critical. 20% of what you receive in the beginning will be factual. The rest will be inaccurate. The next stage is cooperate and stabilize. So over response is sort of you're in the recovery mode and now the response is still ongoing. The situation may not be stable. And certainly the fire department, EMS, police, the homeowner association, if you have one, the utility company, the owner, they're all going to be depending on the situation and you to cooperate with this team, right? Because you're managing that property for them to cooperate to bring this to a stable situation. If you get there and there's a water leak, where's the water shutoff valve? That should be part of our plan. If there's a fire, we want to let the fire department handle it. We want to begin calling in the owner, let them know. We want to cooperate with them, let them know who was the guests that were there, how many guests were there, were there no guests there? Because one of the first things the fire department's going to do when they arrive on a fire situation, they want to know, do I have to rescue people, right? The fire and the rest of the extinguishment is second. The rescue of people is first. The protection of people is first. So let them know that. Cooperate in this situation to help bring a stabilization. The situation is brought to a neutral stance. Be open to the fact that you're cooperating, playing your role. What is your role in an emergency or guest emergency situation? Have you discussed this in your property management business? What are you doing? Is there a liaison with the fire department or with the city? Is there someone who handles public information? Think about that and how have you incorporated that in there? Understand what is occurring. So take action to support bringing the incident to a point where the emergency is over and we begin to recover. We're stabilizing the situation. We may or may not be providing or doing the bulk of the work, but we're that liaison. We're providing information, and we know in the back of our heads that we have to begin to recover from the situation, which is the next step. So stabilize. This is what emergency services are going to do in their respective areas. You want to provide the owner a factual update on the incident and the status as soon as you have it, and just call them right away and say, hey, there's a fire at your property. We're responding. We'll let you know the next update. Give us a few minutes to gather the information. Safeguard the property to prevent further damage, right? As we begin to stabilize the fire department, they're still going to be involved. Police may be involved, and tell them your needs, get their permission to enter when the situation or the scene is safe. Your team do a debrief, gather information and notes from the team who responded so that you can collect and have all of that information. So now we're going to recover. The situation is being brought to a safe stand. There's damage to the property, injury to the guest, fill in the blank, whatever the situation was. Now we provide the owner an update on the property and what actions are needed and what actions are you taking. Next, address the guest needs. If there's guests in a property that had a fire or water damage or an injury, we want to address the guest needs, looking at where they're going to the hospital, providing someone to follow up with them. You want to contact your insurance company or attorney to inform them of the situation, right? And what actions or information are needed. So this is your business here. You want to consider whether you want to do this or not. and just talk to your counsel and get them involved. If you don't have an attorney that you use on a regular basis, talk to one and say, hey, can I involve you in a situation when we have an event? And what could we establish some, fees up front so that we're not reacting to that? And then prepare the documentation you may need for different agencies, insurances, or others, right? Your property manager should be preparing information for the owner on the loss of use claim, on rescheduling guests, letting the police may want information about the individuals that were there. So have that information, be prepared and get your documentation in order for recovery. Next part. So we're in the fourth one, we're kind of winding down, but the tension and how we're feeling about this situation is going to linger. So you need to check in with your team and say, how are you doing? Let's talk about it. Particularly if it was maybe a traumatic situation. We want to know how they're feeling. If you have a situation where you bring in counselors, that may be helpful. But this will be based upon the incident too. However, the more serious the events, the more the team needs to talk about it and more talk about what worked, right? I mean, we're not blaming, we're not finding fault. We're talking about what's happening, how they're feeling as an individual. Let them know we're not talking about blame here. We're wanting them to begin to understand we did our part, and let's look at how they're feeling. Meet with your team to determine actions needed. What are the next step? What does your owner want to do? And what are you going to do? Manage schedule impact to current and future guests, and then set up regular updates on the owner with the repairs, availability of property, issues with the insurance, and then just also provide support for your owner. They just went through a serious situation. Once again, how well you manage the recovery could very well be how well do you keep that guest? Do you keep that owner or other owners, right? It may be where other owners in that particular building, that location, see how well you responded and said, you know what? I don't think my property management company could do what this company did. I'm going to talk to them, because how you recover manages is really important for your business. And then the last part, this could be days, weeks, or months, maybe a year later. However, whatever happened, we need to learn what went well, what did not go well for our property management business, right? We always do this like an incident debrief, and we talk about how do we respond? What could we learn? We're not looking at prevention of the incident or the controls yet. We're just talking about how well did the response go? As current tides or whatever your property management company's name is, how well did we do here? And be honest, and what didn't go as well as you expected, right? So we can learn and get better. Determine what actions you need to improve your business and implement them quickly. And then you got to say, hey, can this happen at another property? We have another property here. Like when this property that I'm sitting in had a water failure in the hot water heater, flooded up behind me here. I also own the property right next door. We immediately went in, isolated that water, and began to check it out and said, yep, we need to replace this hot water heater. Doesn't look like failure is imminent, but we had guests in there. We talked to them, and good thing there were no guests in this property when this happened in June of last year. So we began to look at that and implement. What interim or permanent actions are we implementing to prevent reoccurrence? Train personnel if needed. So now we're looking at not how the response went, but we're looking at what worked and how would we be learning from that business, that incident. And this is kind of where the owner's at. Owner's relying on you to help with that. In this incident here at this property I'm sitting in, where the hot water tank failed on June 1st of last year, 2022, we never inspected the hot water tank, whether the owner or property management company. And it was an older original. They're typically lasting 8 or 9 years. You may be able to get by with a few more years because you're not doing continual use. But that's an example. And so we replaced both of them here and then the property next door. And then share the learnings with your entire business and your key principles. If this is a serious need within the vacation rental industry, we need to consider sharing it outwards and upwards. And my experience so far has been that this is not an area we don't even come close to doing well. And I'm working to figure out how we can do that. More importantly, how can we learn from incidents and share? And looking at the presence of controls. This is all I'm looking at, this is all I'm considering. Yet we let fear drive us to not share that information. So we need to get better at this. Then, based upon the type of incident, some information may not be able to be shared, right? Because of the nature of the situation of the event. So take what you can make improvements on in your business and do them, and know that, hey, there are some things we cannot share. I understand that completely, and that's fine. However, in your business, you can make those changes. So the goal here is to learn, to share, and to grow. So now we've kind of been through this here, and I've got some 3 more scenarios here for post-training I'd like you to take a look at. So I'd like you to write down your responses and actions, and we can discuss them later in the 3 scenarios. Once again, if you're doing this and you'd like me to help facilitate with that, let me know. But here we go. They're still good for you to learn and do inside your business. So first scenario, you receive a call in your office. A 2-bed, 2-bath house you manage is on fire and the guest cannot be found. What are your response actions? Where on this 5 are you at? What are you doing in your business? Go ahead and write those answers down. Next scenario, one of your guests called and said her 3-year-old was getting into the hot tub. They stopped her from entering, but it was closed. The guest asked why there was no cover on the hot tub. What are your response actions? Go ahead and write those down and choose where you're at and how you would go through the various 5 stages on this particular incident. Scenario 3, you receive a call from one of your maintenance technicians. You can barely hear him. He says his company truck hit another car with a family and he's trapped in the truck. He faintly said he needs help and the brakes did not work and I could not stop the truck. What are your response actions? What would you do in the 5 situations in your company? Go ahead and write those down and we can talk about them later. So how do we wrap up here? And I have some questions and thoughts for you. So how does this feel? And I'm not asking you to think about this, right? Because we think about these things and our brain takes us into a different place, right? It starts to say, well, it's okay. I'm not concerned. No, forget that. How you feel is more important than how you think about the situation. How do you feel of how your company is managing these particular situations or has managed situations or will manage incident response and recovery? How is your awareness? Your awareness should be full on, hey, here's what's happening. And now I begin to understand. I am aware that my business needs to be prepared to respond when something occurs. Then we can go back and talk about how these incidents could be prevented, or more importantly, what were the presence of controls that were there? If you haven't heard me enough yet, we really are not in the business of preventing incidents. And I probably need to change this slide. We're not going to prevent every incident. We're just not. And I got numerous examples if you think that you can prevent all incidents. However, we can install controls for our owners and our guests and our employees to reduce the likelihood of an incident occurring, or when an incident occurs, we reduce the likelihood of a severe incident or fatality. Third, do you have procedures or processes in place in your business to manage incidents, right? These are questions and thoughts for you. How are you managing these situations that we covered? I mean, how does this compare to what you have been doing? Maybe you haven't been doing anything. Maybe you're doing this and it's fantastic. If it is, I definitely want to talk to you because I'd love to hear how things are going well. I also like to hear how things are not going as well. And I want to support you in this, right? I've got 30 plus years in industry, in firefighting, and emergency response, crisis management. This is what I've done for my whole career in life, in addition to the 20 years now of property management. I'd love to help you with this. And so think about these situations. If you have any questions, you can certainly get in touch with me. It's eric@safervrs.com. Stop sharing. Anyway, this was put together for you. in the vacation rental industry, particularly members of my Safer VRS group, to support you to look at knowing that we're working on the presence of controls. However, when things happen, we can effectively manage and recover through the 5 steps that we've reviewed. Let me know if you have any questions. Love to hear from you. Go out and create a safe day. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to Safer VR's podcast with Eric Thibodeau. If you enjoy this, I would love you to join my Facebook group, The Safer Vacation Rentals, for more of the same. You can also join our email list at www.safervrs.com.